Hi, this is Calvin Woolert with Solution Dynamics, and I'm going to talk about choosing an energy assessor. There are various options for choosing an energy assessor. One of them is to do it yourself using internal resources. If you do it yourself using internal resources, you have to be aware of the fact that your internal resources usually were hired to do another job, so they often get pulled away doing other tasks, which causes delay. Also, it may not be what they were trained to do and do every day. If you work for a very large organization and you have full-time energy assessors, that may be okay. But if you don't have full-time energy assessors, then they may not be up to speed on the latest technologies, the latest approaches to be able to maximize the value out of your assessment. Government assessments, generally that's in the form of the IAC, which is the Industrial Assessment Centers. There's been a big push recently to get more industrial assessments done. Generally what these are is regional universities, which bring young students out, maybe mid-level students out to your facility. They are usually low cost, sometimes they're free, but understand what you're getting. You're getting a bunch of students who may have never been in a plant before or have very limited experience. They don't necessarily have the real world understanding of what's viable, what it's going to take to implement these opportunities, although they do have guidance. But understand what you're going to get out of these. Typically they have to use pre-canned programs, so if an opportunity doesn't fit within the normal list of opportunities that they can analyze, it's not going to be found. So these tend to be of limited value. They'll point out the obvious stuff that most of the time plants are already aware of, like, hey, I should insulate my pipes and I should fix my compressed air leaks. But don't typically dive too deep. And while they may be low cost, recognize that there is a cost to do the assessment for your business. It takes time away from your resources. They have to coordinate the visit. They have to escort the individuals around, provide a lot of information back so that they can do the calculations that they need to do. So even if it's free or low cost, there's still a significant internal cost that you bear with these low cost assessments. So if you're going to do them, you want to maximize the value that you get out of them. Vendor or manufacturers, this is a common approach. The classic problem-solving model that we're trained as engineers, I'm an engineer, the classic model I'm trained at is okay, I've got this big problem, and what's the first thing I do? I try to break it down into small components. That's what this approach is. Basically, I have a vendor, we've got compressed air, let's bring the compressed air vendor to take a look at it. I have a boiler, I'm going to bring the boiler vendor to look at that. That's fine to a certain extent. However, there are drawbacks to that approach as well. One drawback is the vendor typically is there to sell equipment. That's how they make their money. They may use energy audits as a way to get into the facility and a way to help them be put in a position to generate a proposal to you. But don't be surprised if a compressed air vendor is recommending that you should buy their latest and greatest compressor. That may not always be the best choice or the best return on investment for you. And they may not always be unbiased or truthful as well. I've seen oftentimes where they'll vastly overestimate the run hours or the part load conditions. Just so be wary when you go that approach. The other thing with this approach is you are limiting the scope dramatically of what they're focusing on. So there are often interrelations between one system and another, which can be positive or it can be negative. And if you don't appreciate those interrelations between systems, you're not going to get that when somebody gets the blinders put on and just says, okay, I'm just looking at, typically a compressed air auditor from a manufacturer will typically focus a lot of their time and effort on the generation end of the compressed air system, when there could be a lot that can be done on the use end to alternative uses so that you can reduce the load and maybe shut a compressor off rather than buy a new compressor to serve a load that's not needing to be served. There's a lot of companies out there that just do audits, and they may do audits rather well. But one thing about an auditing only company is they tend to do their assessment, deliver a report, get their check, and they leave. And the downside of that is they're not standing behind their work. fundamentally they're doing what they get paid to, and they're not accountable downstream. So if you need some help putting a project together, they're typically going to do this just on a conceptual level. There's a lot more work to be done in terms of taking that conceptual idea and turning it into firm cost and firm savings that can be guaranteed, that are investment grade. I know who the contractors are. I know what the scope of work is. This equipment's been sized, it's been selected. An auditing only company is not going to do that. And a lot of auditing only companies are just used to doing HVAC commercial building type audits. So the main energy users in a commercial building are HVAC and lighting. You get into a manufacturing facility, there's all kinds of energy using processes. The process itself may use a lot of energy that a traditional commercial HVAC auditing type company, they're going to turn a blind eye to it because they don't have any expertise in it. So the value that you get out of that assessment may be rather small, because the actual energy consumption in HVAC and lighting in a manufacturing facility is often very small. So if that's the only thing you're looking at, you're not going to have a big impact. What you really want is an independent ESCO. Solution Dynamics is an independent ESCO. ESCO stands for Energy Services Company. All we do is energy efficiency. We are vendor independent, so we have no quotas to meet. We're not trying to sell you particular equipment. We're free to work with any equipment that you want. And whether it's Solution Dynamics or another company, an independent ESCO offers a lot of advantages over some of these other choices. So the key thing to ask yourself when you're working with an assessor is, what are you buying? Really, you're buying the results. So you can save some cost up front, but if you're trading that for the quality delivered, that's probably not a good choice. So to give you a real world example, in option A, this is two assessments of the same site using two different auditors. Option A, which is one that Solution Dynamics did. Option A, we identified $1.345 million worth of savings for a total installed cost, all in total installed cost, $2.77 million, a 2.1 year simple payback. Option B, which was another auditor, which by the way cost about 5 times as much as we charged for this assessment. They identified $246,000 worth of savings at a cost of $1.23 million, a 5-year payback. Okay, this assessment produced an IRR of basically that works out to be 20%. Over here, this IRR works out to be roughly 94%. So, much higher rate of return. The bigger impact still, which I advocate, using NPV as a good indicator. Net present value for this project equals $614,000. So that's what this option's worth. Over here, the NPV delivered would be $7 million. So obviously you can see there's $6.5 million worth of more of net present value, simply because the auditor was more experienced in industrial manufacturing facilities. Another example for a paper mill, we were doing some assessments at the paper mill, and the site manager there said, you guys are the 5th people to come through here in the last 2 years. I don't expect you're going to find a lot. And at the end of that activity, we were able to identify 10 times more energy savings than the previous 4 auditors combined. So what you're buying when you're choosing your energy assessor is you're buying the experience and the value delivered. So don't get caught up in trying to find the lowest cost option or figuring out a way that you can do it. Really, the upfront cost is usually at least 1 order of magnitude, often 2 orders of magnitude less than the value of the delivery that you're looking for in the end. Thank you for attending this webinar series, and we look forward to presenting some more.